I'd like to welcome you to the December 7th regular scheduled meeting of the Lufkin City Council. Raymond Vann is with us this evening. He's going to lead us in our invocation.
Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for the multitudes of blessings that we receive each and every day. We thank you for truly giving us this blessed city and people that are willing to serve our city as volunteers, as employees. We also ask that you will bless this council, help them to be filled with your Holy Spirit, that they may make decisions that are according to your will. We pray this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now enter the public comment portion of our meeting. Items listed on the agenda are now open for public comment. If you would like to comment on a specific agenda item or items, please come to the microphone and state the specific agenda item or items you wish to address and limit your comments to 3 minutes total. City Council members will not respond during the public comments, but will take your comments into consideration during their deliberations. So if you'd like to make a public comment, I encourage you to step forward at this time. All right, there being no one, we'll move to the consent agenda. Thanks, sir. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. And I meant to take a minute earlier, but I'd like to introduce a couple of people that are with us this evening. We have our new HR director, Adriana Thomasy. If you would stand for us. Thank you for being here. And Tara Hendricks, our new marketing director. Thank you for being here as well. And it looks like we have an Eagle Scout in the audience this evening. Would you like to stand and tell us your name?
I'm Luke Patrick Owens with Troop 136, with Boy Scout Troop 136. I'm working on my life rank right now.
Very good. We appreciate you being with us tonight. That's my old troop. Are y'all still meeting in the park?
Yes, sir, we are.
All right, well, very good. All right, business agenda. Item 9, conduct a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance granting a special use permit for the placement of a communications tower on property addressed as 808 Ricks Road. Bruce?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the applicant, Michael Crane with AT&T Mobility, and as I get started, this is proposing to construct a 150-foot AT&T communication tower with the related equipment. You can see on the screen to your left is the area, the block. The subject property is the striped area, and then the block is the specific area that you'll be able to see. The original application was for construction of a 160-foot tower. The proposed tower will be located on a 75 feet by 75 feet fence lease. That's the square area that you can see to the right of the property, within a 4-acre tract of property owned by Richard LaPrue. The general character of the area is single-family residential with properties to the north being vacant. To the northeast of the property, the City of Lufkin maintains a regional detention pond. That's detention pond number 8. The Angelina Church of Christ is located to the west of the property along Tulane Drive. The subject property and the associated lease area currently zoned residential large. The surrounding properties are a mix of residential large along with residential small, and also a mix of commercial as well. The subject property is designated on the future land use map as medium density residential and falls under the suburban neighborhood focus area. The properties in the general area are almost completely classified as medium density residential with regional retail along the west side of Tulane Drive and low density residential to the east of the subject property. Staff finds the proposed special use permit consistent with the zoning and future land use plan as well as the existing uses within the area. Staff finds the use of the property for a cellular tower of benefit to the general area, especially the southern area of the city, and does not anticipate any adverse effects. The proposed special use permit was approved by a 5-to-1 vote by the Planning and Zoning Commission at its regular meeting on November 8, 2021, with the following provisions in agreement. Number one is decreasing the height of the communication tower from the original request of 160 to 150 feet in height. Also, a relocation of the original lease area and access easement from the west side of the property to the east side of the property. And finally, the tower to be painted as much as possible to blend in with the surrounding landscape. Now, council is familiar with these. This is not the first one that you've dealt with, so you're aware that due to the signed opposition of 20% of the area required notification, a supermajority vote of at least 3/4, that is 6 out of 7 of the city council members, is required per chapter 211.006 of the local government code. Now, as city council may recall, wireless communication facilities, including towers and antenna, may be regulated by local zoning if it exists, but such regulation is limited by the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996. Under this statute, the local municipalities are prohibited from certain limitations on wireless communication facilities. Our city attorney is prepared to go over that or answer any questions council has in that regard. Just by way of a reminder to council, I've asked the city attorney to give a brief review of the prohibited matters that council may not take into consideration or may not base its decisions on. So at this point, Ms. Erica Neal, our city attorney, will comment briefly on that.
Like Bruce said, there are several things that the federal government either requires us to do or the city to do if they're going to deny a special use permit to construct a communications tower, or there are things that you are prohibited from considering. One of the things that if you're going to deny the installation, you must base that on substantial evidence. So you actually have to have findings of fact, and there has to be some type of violation that you see with regard to the construction, whether it's setback lines or some other type of ordinance. You also can't unreasonably discriminate between the construction of cell phone towers. So even if you have substantial evidence that you're considering when denying the application, you can't discriminate between a tower that was already granted a special use permit and then this specific tower. There has to be some distinguishing characteristic. You can't have any regulation that would prohibit the provision of cell service. So anything that would actually interfere with providing people who don't have access to cell service, you cannot do. And then you also must act on any application or request within a reasonable time period, which I believe we're doing. And then any decision denying also has to be in writing. I don't know if I said that earlier. So there has to be written findings and conclusions based on this substantial evidence, and then that has to be presented to the applicant in writing. And anybody who is opposed to the application, it can't be for reasons based on environmental effects, you know, that I'm afraid I might get cancer, or it can't be based on things like aesthetics. That's all I have.
Okay. With respect to the one comment by Erica regarding the timing of this issue, you probably recall that this item was placed on the November 16th, 2021 meeting, and due to the fact unexpectedly some council members were not present, we couldn't take it up. So this is actually the first opportunity we've had to address it. So staff recommends City Council conduct a public hearing and consider on first reading of an ordinance granting a special use permit for the communications tower on property addressed as 808 Rich Road.
All right, this is a, find my place here. This is a public hearing. If you'd wish to speak on this item, you can step forward at this time.
My name is Doyle Bruce. I'm lucky number 13 there on the map. That's my house, or that's where we live. And I know as Erica was talking about some of those things, what I'm going to be saying, a lot of that is going to be, well, sorry, the law says get out of the way, basically, is what I hate to say. But I still want to express my concerns, and I do believe I do have some things that maybe you can think about and maybe can be substantiated that we can find some help. Begin by saying thank you for your service to our city, and thank you for being able to listen to me here. Cut to the chase, I really don't want this monstrous tower behind me. If you look at the picture there that I handed each one of you, that's one that will be a similar tower that it will look like as I'll look out my living room window, as I sit on my porch drinking my cup of coffee, going to barbecue a little bit. That's going to be right behind me, and I simply do not want to have it there. And I make this statement, I know that all possible things have not been considered. I know they haven't. My wife said, well, how can you say that, Doyle? Well, I can say that because we were originally contacted back however long it was ago to have it on our place, and they never contacted us back again. I talked to them about it. They never contacted back again until I submitted my proposal to the one going into next door. So myself, were there other people that were rejected as well, besides myself being one that didn't cut the chase and the one next door to me? But also looking around and seeing that there's a tower there by Cafe Del Rio. Maybe some of you have seen that tower. You look at I believe it's the AT&T tower. You see how much room that could be raised up where there'd be more area that it could cover? Question maybe there. I'm not the expert. I don't know. There's the water tower, White House, which there may be problems with that as well. But I've seen several other towers. There's a tower just off of White House Road, and you'll see that. I've drawn a Google map there. As you can see, it's about 3,700 something feet from our house, which I believe it does have AT&T on it, but not at a very low rate. Perhaps it could be raised. All different possibilities they could look at it. And I know as he'll present his case, that he presents what you want to hear and to convince us that we need to have it, but I can't help but think, is there some other options? I believe, too, perhaps in the future, you look at technology and how it's changing. Who would dream that we could have an automobile that get 60 miles per gallon? But when the technology is called for, that let's improve, what can we do instead of building another big tower in somebody's backyard? What can be done to help us live a little bit more aesthetic, as Erica put it, alive? I know what you're being asked to do is to permit within a residential area, an area that I live in, an area that it is a poorer neighborhood, but with the tower here, it will be guaranteed to stay a poorer neighborhood. There's several other things that I wasn't able to get to in this 3 minute, and I have put it down at the bottom of that third page, some things that you could read over and you can see concerns that I have. That it takes more than just the 3 minutes to describe that. I guess that red light tells me that I'm done. I simply don't want this egregious tower in my neighborhood. And I thank you so much for your consideration and listening to what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Bev Francis, 112 East Pecan, San Antonio. I'm the attorney for SBA Communications. With a 3-minute limit, we provided you with a binder, and I'll be referring to the tabs as we go through it so that we can explain to you, as we say on the second page, in whose best interest is this tower? Is it in the best interest of AT&T Mobility, or is it in the best interest of you and your fellow constituents? And the big question is, why are we even here? If you'll go to tab 1, you'll see a Google Earth shot showing that SBA Communication has 2 towers in the vicinity of this proposed tower. And these 2 towers are providing excellent voice and data service. I know in a minute you'll probably hear about radio frequency maps, but if you look at tab 2, AT&T touts on its website that they have excellent voice and data service which is accomplished by my client's 2 towers. If you'll look at tab 3, please, you'll see that AT&T Mobility and SBA enjoy an excellent relationship. SBA is one of the top 3 telecommunication infrastructure providers in the country. And again, why are we here? You'll see behind the splash page that says Jonathan Roush, Senior Director of Marketing letter. He makes some critical points, and I've given to you a blow-up of that letter in your front pocket. Number 1 is the White House tower. AT&T has been on that tower for over a decade. And as recently as almost a year ago, a little over a year ago, AT&T amended their agreement to upgrade their equipment and add FirstNet. Critical, as Scott will tell you. They had never contacted SBA saying, we have a capacity issue, we have a problem. There's multiple, as we can explain to you and as set out in Jonathan's letter, room to expand upwards if they need it or below. They're on 6,000, almost 7,000 of SBA's towers. Why haven't they spoken with SBA, asking and exploring a business relationship if they had needs for improvement? But we do know why they have never discussed it under tab 4. This is part of a 2017 business plan. AT&T and Verizon in 2017, November of 2017, entered into an agreement with each other that they would go out and target communities such as yours, such as Navasota, such as Red Oak, such as Shreveport, all around the country, to build towers as close as physically possible to existing towers, not for the purpose of improving service, but for the purpose of removing towers from there. If I may just make one more comment. You'll see the dramatic impact of those continuing on in tab 4. You have Deer Park, you have Red Oak, where they've gone in and built these adjacent to existing towers and the negative impact. We provided you with multiple examples of the negative impact. I'm sure you've driven down the highway and wondered, why are there 2 towers next to each other? It is this reason. As finally pointed out in a presentation in which a tower similar to this was denied in Navasota, council members such as you comment after seeing the pictures. It looks like a theme park zip line. It looks like theme park zip line. Final question I think you need to ask the applicant, who is AT&T Mobility, who's going to be the tower owner? Because they file as the applicant, yet look at their plans that we have provided for you under tab 5, look at their application, look at the FCC filings, and other documentation. Tillman Infrastructure is designated as the applicant. They're part of the plan that of 2017 to come in and present this business plan. Thank you for the time. I've also provided you at the end, recognizing the time limit, an article, if you could take a minute, look at it, the impact it has on direct citizens who, like Mr. and Mrs. Bruce, walked out of their house, came back that afternoon, and there was a tower. A 150-foot tower is a 15-story structure. Please bear that in mind. Thank you, and we respectfully request that you oppose it and ask them why they have not been in touch with SBA to talk about a relocation or an improvement of their equipment that they may need on the towers. It just doesn't add up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, council members, I appreciate your time with this, appreciate your service as well. Mike Crane, represent AT&T Wireless, and don't want to bore you with the 29 pages of information, but you have it in front of you, and I'm certainly able to answer any questions. But before I do want to address several items. First of all, 150-foot tower, 410 feet from your home is not right out your back door. We agreed during the planning and zoning hearing with the Bruces that we should move this to the opposite side of the property, which we did, and made the concessions that Mr. Green mentioned from planning and zoning, and additional concessions to boot, including a wood fence, including a landscaped area that would shield the view from the bottom. But at the end of the day, nothing that we said or did was to his liking. We want to be good neighbors. AT&T does not want to come in and, alienate the constituents, alienate the population. They specifically, and it's addressed in our 29-page proposal, they want to be able to cover an area that is one of the busiest areas in Lufkin. You have Home Depot, you have Walmart, you have one of the busiest intersections, if not the busiest intersection in Lufkin, that does lack from coverage. Every single tower surrounding this area that are all noted on the proposal, if you look at page 13, if you look at page 20, every tower that surrounds this area, AT&T is on. This is an area that an engineer, not from opinion, but an actual engineer stated, we need coverage in this area. This is not a replacement to what SBA has, what AT&T has on SBA towers surrounding this site. This is an enhancement that is needed according to an RF engineer. The propagation maps are real. They come up there and they say, we don't have coverage in here. We're losing capacity because of the tower that's referenced a mile to the northwest. The capacity is needed for everybody. There's nobody in this audience that I would venture does not have a cell phone that they use. Once this tower's here, regardless of who builds it, build-a-suit is not a new concept. Build-a-suit is every retail industry in America. It may be a McDonald's, but it's still built by somebody else, possibly even owned by someone else, with McDonald's franchising, Starbucks franchising. End of the day, it's still going to have AT&T on it to supplement their service to the tower on White House. The tower on White House, we have no intention on removing our equipment. As Mr. Bebb, Mr. Francis mentioned, it was enhanced only a year ago with FirstNet, one of the most important enhancements that can be put on a tower for emergency communications. End of the day, every tower in this area with AT&T has been enhanced with enhanced 5G, latest technology antennas. There's still a capacity issue. I've included an email directly from Senior Real Estate and Construction Manager Daniel Nutt with the North Texas market directly with AT&T. In this email from today, he states, this is in no way related to a relocation of any existing site. The new bill is to mitigate a capacity trigger on an existing site and fund it as such, which is the existing site is 1.1 miles to the northwest of the proposed location. This new project is to offload capacity. It is not to replace, but to supplement. Available to answer any questions.
Mr. Crane, I have a quick question. I've looked through the material that you provided, and we provided that to council, but two questions I have that I haven't been able to find. Perhaps I've overlooked it. One is there a current gap in service?
Yes,
anywhere?
there is.
Where would that be?
On page 6, you'll note the existing service. On page 7, you'll note the service with this tower supplementing the current capacity.
Is that, I see increased service, but is there a current gap that's not being served?
That is an area where there are dropped calls. That is an area where there are complaints. That is an area where calls, in some cases, not every case, 5 o'clock in the evening is going to be much worse than 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
But that is an area where there is a capacity issue.
Okay, so but there's no area where that's currently uncovered.
I can't answer that it's currently uncovered.
Okay, and the second question I had that was unclear, but it goes directly to the question that was raised by the gentleman before you. Have there been good faith efforts to increase capacity with the current existing cell towers that already appear nearby?
Well, I'll be honest, Mr. Francis answered his own question with that. When AT&T came to SBA to address and upgrade the antennas there, that is the good faith effort to enhance the capacity. Latest technology, enhance the ability to propagate the service, so absolutely.
Okay, so it's AT&T's position that there was an effort made, but it wasn't responded to?
Was not sufficient for the capacity issues they have.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Would you come up again and, yes, sir.
Yes,
So
Mayor.
explain that again. This is interesting. So these folks don't want the tower. This gentleman represents a tower up the road. You guys represent a new tower that you want to put in, but yet the customer is on the SBA tower and wants to go on you guys' tower as well. So have, indeed, to clear things up, a good faith effort has been made with SBA by AT&T to try and relocate equipment on the existing tower, if I'm saying that correctly?
No, sir. As if you'll take 1 second and look at the letter, you will see that two things that will come out that we've highlighted. One is they've never contacted SBA about this issue of having capacity. A year and a half ago would be the ideal time. If you're on 7,000 towers, you're in constant communication, saying, oh, we need a tower. Do you have a tower in Shreveport? Do you have a tower in Lufkin? Blah, blah, blah. Never raised. A year and a half ago would have been the ideal time. And as bolded in here, Jonathan points out there is more than ample space. If AT&T needs to increase its rad height, that's the center of the antennas, there's ample space. They do that regularly during their regular meetings. No discussion, Mayor, at all. And it's puzzling to us, and that's why we put in here. Why are we here? And why is AT&T the applicant when Tillman, who's part of this program of 2017, filed the FAA registration, which is in your packet, and the FCC registration? They're going to be the owner of the tower, not AT&T. So something is not right. That's why we weren't being funny or trying to make a point. But this is impactful on the industry. It's more impactful on your community to start seeing these zip lines, as the council in Navasota said. But
Thank you, sir.
there has been absolutely no contact about that, their need. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Hello, my name is Chris Prescott. I'm with Solaris Group. We're the site acquisition, turnkey site acquisition vendor for AT&T. I live at 4613 Sandera Lane in Flower Mound, Texas. Just wanted to address what Mr. Francis is saying, because there's really two different things going on here. Amendments were done for technology upgrades in terms of antennas. Height adjustments are what he's talking about. If you make an adjustment to a height on this site and change its vertical elevation versus the equipment change and upgrade, which did transpire on both neighboring sites, you're having to adjust every other site around. At the end of the day, what this site is, this proposed site is a cell split. This is very common where these sites are experiencing capacity issues. In this particular case, one of the major issues is Sector B on the one that's 1 mile northwest, which is an SBA site. It's completely overwhelmed because of the shopping center that showed up earlier, but it's to the, I want to say to the north and to the west. It kind of runs from 9 to 12 o'clock and sweeps around. So that's really providing the capacity issues that we're having at this location. And we've, in these cases, it's just very common you have a cell split to offload this traffic. Now, this site will be lower than the antenna center lines at the other two sites. And over time, there could be a situation where they had the cell split from here, and it would be down even lower, right, at a different location. So it's a honeycomb scenario. If you can imagine a honeycomb, and at the end of the day, say you lay a honeycomb grid over a city. At some point in time, the saturation will be that each tip of that 5-sided polygon would conceivably have some type of antenna there, be it small cell, could be a rooftop co-location, it could be a cell tower. And this is how you deal with capacity issues as the traffic moves along. Some of the problems that we had were during the COVID. We learned a lot during COVID that when people stay home, the system gets overloaded because there's not that commuter traffic out there.
So you're not able to add anything to the existing tower on White House to resolve the issue? It wouldn't help?
we've got the most up-to-date, inclusive of FirstNet, which Mr. Francis has just confirmed and conveyed. So we've done everything we can here. We don't have another option but to split and put in this new site at this location.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, sir, or Mr. Crane, either one. I have a follow-up question. The reason I'm asking is in a former life, I handle some of these matters as an attorney. And typically, so just for clarification for the council again, you might be able to help us. Typically what we have, and you're familiar with this with AT&T, basically when we look at the propagation studies, typically the AT&T or some similar wireless communications provider would come in and say this area is not being currently covered by the providers that we have. What I think is unusual for us is that you're the provider in those other places. So if I'm understanding, AT&T is saying we're not currently providing adequately for these areas. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are not currently providing, in some cases, not at all in this area.
And the technical questions I know are lost on us sometimes, but what I hear you also saying is that is that an impossibility where you currently are? If the distance is 0.63 miles away, that's impossible to do that?
0.63 miles from, I don't believe
From a
that's
current SBA tower?
the SBA tower, right. I think I showed that in there. I don't know if it's 0.63, but it's closer to a mile from what I had shown in there. I believe you're looking at
Yeah, the site to the northwest is
1.05.
It's a little bit up right at a mile.
Okay.
And then there is another site.
Yeah, the two that we have, I think, show 1.5 and 0.63.
Right.
But in any event, it's about a mile.
about a mile. That's correct. That's correct.
So I mean, for our part in this, all of us we don't deal with the technical issues. I guess it would help council if we understood whether it's a current impossibility where you are.
Well, the current situation is that the site's overloaded with traffic. So
Right.
it's really the data and the.
And I understand, excuse me, I understand that, but the question that I have is, given the overload of the data and the capacity as it currently exists, is that not possible to increase that where you are?
To cover this area would not be. To cover this area, I mean, especially in times of peak traffic, a Saturday at Walmart, it's
And
absolutely
why is that impossible for you?
Moving vertically up and down, if we went up, it would actually encapsulate more traffic within the existing site, which enhances the capacity issue, right?
Sure.
So if anything, we would want to go down, especially if we had this new site, right? It might make sense over time that, hey, we can lower these neighboring sites now because we have this one to split and offload that moving traffic.
So the confusion I have, if that's the case, if every capacity question that arises means that we have to proliferate with other towers without resolving the issues, is that what it means? We're always going to have to add additional towers?
If you look at small cells are typically 30 to 45 feet tall. If you go to a 100-foot small cell, it simply won't propagate. It's too high. And it's similar with this type of capacity issue. You can go too high. 300 foot is too high for this issue because you have such a dense population in this area with traffic and shopping centers. So in this case, going higher could actually defeat the purpose and decrease our capacity. We would not be able to, may propagate further out to the country, but it would not cover the area that we're trying to cover.
Yeah, but that raises the question for me that apparently we would have to just add towers, some lower, some higher, in the same 1 mile radius.
In a case like this, you should not need to add another tower anywhere near this tower. It's simply put, we're adding this to be able to accommodate 4 different carriers.
Okay.
The area is pretty much at its densification. It really comes down to a question of densification. How dense is the area? And that particular area is extremely dense, especially with the traffic on the highway and the shopping centers in front. So it's really densification that drives capacity-related issues.
Yeah.
I would say this area is just about at its maximum densification, which this site will solve. Be the end of the traffic issues in that area.
Well, that's helpful. Council normally gets the scenario I mentioned to you, and that is someone comes in and says, we need to reach out farther. That's why we need a tower. And we need to reach farther with this cell service. So this may be the first time we have seen this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a question for
Thank you,
me.
sir.
For you gentlemen, why is there density there and not 1 mile down the street? Because your search ring doesn't include Walmart.
1 mile down the street is too close to a different tower. We looked along areas on the east side across from Walmart, where the Tamu property is. A, it wasn't available. B, it was 50 foot lower in elevation, which would mean an equitable.
Well, no, what I'm asking is, you've got a tower every so many miles, right?
Right.
If all of a sudden you have capacity overload on that one tower on White House, you'd think you'd have the same problem 1 mile down the street.
It's actually not the tower on White House. It's the tower at the to the northwest. I'm not sure the name of that specific tower. The tower to the northwest, where the DPS tower is,
Okay.
is where the tower that has the capacity issue. So you can actually see it in the map. The capacity is, it's one of the biggest red areas on the map, and it has at one of the busiest intersections across from the mall, across from the retail areas of Lufkin. So that is the area that has the problem.
I have a question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
And I do understand what Bruce has been, our city manager, excuse me, Mr. Green. I do understand what he's saying. My concern, my question is, how soon would it be anticipated that the growth that is there and the introduction of information from the new infrastructure growth from the federal government, would there possibly be a look at adding more towers? Because I would hate to have cell towers in Lufkin look like the oil derricks in Oklahoma.
Sure, no, agreed. And in a case like that, as we would need to lower our RAD center, as they call it, we would be looking at I believe it's the courtyard. We would be looking at the residential end that's at the corner of the intersection, 60-foot rooftops instead of 150-foot towers. We would be looking at lower elevations that would, accommodate very specific areas along the thoroughfares.
So why can't you do that now?
Well, at this point, we need more coverage over a broader area, but not broad enough to go 4 miles out, but broad enough to cover that intersection.
Well, but is there someone? My concern is if that's something which is logical, I would think.
As the city grows, absolutely.
But to keep coming back, especially in a residential neighborhood, if you know that that's a potential, I would say it wouldn't be that long, 5 to 10 years. Why can't you go that direction now? Because the growth is coming.
Well, the growth is there right now to accommodate what we have here. And to add 2 additional or 3 additional locations on different hotel rooftops, as an example, there's not the ability for that to really help the site. This helps the entire area all the way to the mall. So this covers that area and will cover this area for the next, as you mentioned, at least 10 years.
I would say that in respect to what you're describing, over time, that would make the hotel rooftops viable because they're running more around the 60 to 90 foot elevation, right? So as we go forward, if we run into capacity issues, rooftops will be things that we would be looking at.
Is that on the record?
Well, certainly.
We'd rather be there anyway.
And small cells as well, right? Because the next step down in terms of generational growth would be small cells, which are masked to look, you can attach the power poles, you can make them look like street lights and things.
I was going to ask you about that because one of the things that at least I observed, or was somebody gave me some information on 2 years ago, was the use of other structures that are already in existence that meet the height that you are requesting, and they are. It's almost like building a McDonald's in Germany and making it compare to the infrastructure that's there, rather than creating a new environment. So these towers, you couldn't even tell they were really towers. I wish I had my papers with me, but they are there, and I don't see AT&T trying to accommodate the environmental issues, not the birds flying, because if there were bird problems, you wouldn't have a tower. But the visual environmental environment, and because you can, and I guess I'm a little tired of that, but because the companies can come in and build these structures, I don't see, and you may be doing it, but I don't see the attempt to blend in with the existing community to make it less obtrusive in terms of the visibility of your tower.
With respect, during the planning and zoning hearing, that we made the aesthetical changes to the tower being lowered in height, the tower being painted to match based on whatever was determined to be the best color, whether it's green, brown, whatever that is. The changes to the tower itself, the base of the tower, to ensure there's a landscape.
The base of the tower is, I can show you one that promise was made 2 years ago and all the trees died. So, not talking about the tower, I'm talking about the community, the environment where that tower will exist. I know, and I'm sure the council knows, there's a whole lot that we can do to make you not have your tower to do what you want to do, because the Federal Trade Commission has said that we couldn't. But you would be more community friendly if I could see an attempt to place your equipment, which is needed because the children during COVID needed it, to make it more compatible with the existing community. And you don't have to answer that. That's my rhetoric.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Give me 1 second, I promise.
Sure. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Thank you again for the courtesy. As the city manager and the city attorney will tell you, and you probably already discussed, there's a section of the FCC called 6409, which means that towers can be administratively approved, without you all ever seeing it, an additional height of 20 feet. Now, it's even gotten trickier because now they're saying it's 20 feet from the top of the top antennas to the bottom of the next antenna. So conceivably, it could be increased at least maybe 24 feet. This is important. You've heard me say over and over again, this is AT&T. They're a provider. They provide the wireless. They don't own the tower. The tower is like a strip center, and they lease out bays of it. AT&T is a bay. So Tillman, who has filed it, is in the business of loading that tower up with additional carriers. So you're talking about, and they're admitting, we can add 3 or 4 carriers. They can also come in once it's built, Tillman can, and say, we apply for 6409 because now, let's say T-Mobile, which is on the SBA tower, wants there also. And then now you're looking at least a 170-foot tower in a residential area. That's what is so interesting about this. You have the applicant who is a wireless carrier. They don't build and own towers. Why did they do that? They didn't want to tell you that they are not the tower owner. They'll be a tenant. So thank you again for the courtesy, but you're looking at a potential of a 170-foot tower in people's backyards.
So, Mr. Francis, you work
Yes,
in this
sir.
business. I have a question. we're all generally told that they'll be able to put this tower up regardless if they show a gap in service. So how do you fight that?
Oh, I have to do it all the time. That's why we're deeply concerned about the impact on the industry. They have to show a couple of things. One is a gap. Now, what's interesting about that is, why haven't they talked with SBA and let our radio frequency engineers analyze it? Why did they go dark? So have they really shown the gap? Have they really designated that? The second thing is they have to show there is no alternative site. They've listed a few, but is that going to be sufficient for them to uphold any type of what we call a 332 action? I don't believe so, and that's what I do for a living. So to answer your question, it's a gap, and it even is more complicated. The FCC and the federal courts have not really addressed the question of how do you prove capacity. It's easy when you say a gap in service, as the city manager was saying, but the courts have not really gotten in and addressed how do you prove up capacity? Because capacity is different at 5 in the morning, maybe versus 5 in the evening, Saturday versus Sunday. So they're saying it's a capacity. But again, why are we here? Why aren't they talking to one of the 3 largest tower operators, and developers? Why aren't they talking to our engineers? And why did they apply versus the company that's going to own the vertical real estate? Thank you.
Can I ask one question? When you're talking about, I hear you talk about gap and capacity, so there's got to be a difference. Now, to me, gap means there's no service from here to here. There's a gap. Service here, and then there's a gap. Capacity means there's service. It just may not be as fast as you want it to be. It may take longer to dial up your YouTube or whatever.
Yes, sir.
But there is service there.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Am I saying that right?
That is true.
There's not a gap in service there, which we have in a lot of areas of Lufkin and Angelina County, where there is no service.
Right.
So what they're saying is at peak times, the capacity goes down.
And if you look at their prop maps, it's not like the maps they showed you. It's not like there's a hole. They're getting coverage.
Okay.
They're claiming that capacity is gap. And where is the radio frequency engineer that did those? We usually bring in the engineer to say and answer those questions for you. But you nailed it. There is a difference in the capacity at peak times versus like when I went through the trees.
A gap in service. Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to refute a few things.
Okay.
Capacity and coverage, I mean, those are very similar in many cases. In some cases, when you're driving down and, you've seen an accident and you can't get coverage, it's an issue. Your daughter browsing Facebook, maybe not so much. But there are times then there may not be coverage at all. Other times it is just capacity. It may just be slowed down. This is one of those areas that kind of has both issues. I mean, certain times of the day you may have fantastic coverage. Other times of the day you may have none. So there is a gap in service in this area, not 100% of the time, but it is.
How much of the time? Do we know?
Honestly, I can't. I don't know.
Because
That's a good question. I can't say that I know.
It's like, still saying
26 minutes a day, 3 hours a day. I don't know.
Okay. But I mean, when we have areas, my question, I guess, is AT&T wanting more towers because there's a reduced capacity in this location when we've got areas around the town where there's absolutely no coverage.
Sure.
So why aren't we putting towers in those locations to increase not just capacity?
And they
but
probably
coverage?
will at some point. But an RF engineer,
Right.
not with SBA,
Right.
not with American Tower, not with one of the other big 3, but AT&T's own RF engineer said, this is an area we need coverage better. We don't have good coverage here. We have a gap here certain times.
Right.
No, they did not go to SBA's RF engineer because they have their own, hundreds of them. End of the day, they will need to be on this tower, just like you might need a McDonald's up the street and, Gilbane Construction may build it for them and may own it, but it's still a McDonald's. This is still going to be AT&T, and hallelujah, it's going to have more than capability for more than one carrier, because if Verizon needs here, T-Mobile needs here, you don't want 2 more towers. That's the point of the whole business is
we want to cover our area, but in the end of the day, so does Verizon, so does T-Mobile. So this tower will have the ability to have a bay for each of those carriers.
Help me understand, excuse me, one last question. Help me understand the relationship of your need for coverage or capacity, or all those big words, and broadband.
Broadband would be, can you address that better?
Broadband, which has some government funding coming down here soon, I believe, and one of the new
Yes, they do.
bills passed recently, but that's high-speed access. That's for computers.
It doesn't have anything to do with communication?
It doesn't have anything to do with cellular communications. Now, people could say on a landline through fiber optics, and broadband have like a call, but it would be almost like a landline type situation. It wouldn't necessarily be wireless, right? It wouldn't be something that's used in commuter traffic and things that are actually truly mobile. It's more for a fixed individual that's at home, homeschooling, or home during COVID, to be able to have access to high-speed access, which otherwise fiber may not be there, right? So it's kind of to help people get access to the internet when fiber's not available. It's a wireless point of access.
All right.
One final, if I might, Mayor, one real quick question, and do you have any written evidence in your data that show these proposed areas of coverage are not currently being met at any time during the day?
So that data could be provided, because it was used and based on to generate what we see here.
But I understand the anecdotal, the drop, the blockage, the block calls, customer complaints, but that's anecdotal. What I'm asking is if you have written data and information showing that this area that you've highlighted, that coverage is not being met in any of those areas.
So do I have written data within this package? I do not.
Well, it's been presented to the city.
No, sir. No, sir.
So we don't actually know if at any time during the day, other than the anecdotal information, that there is a true gap in service at any particular time.
These are RF propagation maps from an engineer who has stated.
Right, and I'm asking for the supporting data that shows in written form that at some time during the day, that we have remote users who are incapable of using their telephone in the areas that you want to cover.
With request for a continuance, I could provide that information. We could come back at a later date and provide that in advance of the hearing if we were to continue the hearing.
All right. That would have to come. That would have to be a request for you to do that, Council Kent.
I would say that,
Bruce, I'd like to move forward with a vote on this now. I don't want a continuance.
Okay.
I would say that it's a huge investment, right? And AT&T wouldn't go spend the $500,000 into this if there wasn't a legitimate reason to be there.
It's a tax write-off.
Very well.
All right,
I'm
very
finished,
good.
Council.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so is that you want to make your motion, Mr. Burfine?
No, I'm not going to make a motion. I'm going to vote.
Just ready to vote for it? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion on
Well, can you make the
proceeding here?
motion to go ahead, call the question?
Go ahead.
Oh, I move that we take a vote on this issue. This is the first reading, right?
Yes.
So I move,
Yeah.
You gotta say one or the other.
Yeah.
Which way?
You gotta be approving it or
oh, I oppose it. So what do I need to do?
So you're making a motion to oppose, deny.
You're maybe
That's what I
deny?
do. That's exactly what I do, Mark.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so we have a motion
Do we have
to
to have a
deny
basis?
with.
Do we have to have a basis?
It's in the record.
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's in the record. You can state what it is, though.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion to deny.
All right, so we have a motion, a second to deny. We need to do a roll call. vote, because I understand we need 3/4 of the council.
It doesn't matter.
Pretty well
Pretty
there
good
right
open for
now.
discussion right quick, Mayor.
We sure can. Yeah,
Because I'd like to lean on our council here who's, I mean, she started this off with some things that she researched. And again, it seems like we're, in all around this, we're hamstrung in a lot of ways as whether or not we can even have any effect on whether or not this tower goes in. Again, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. I love cell service. I don't get it everywhere, but so is there anything that our council has found in her research that the city has maybe an ordinance on or some regulations that would allow us to deny this permit, this tower going in, or like I said, we had to have facts, we have to write a letter as to what those facts are. Do we have the supporting facts?
So I think your best case is there's not been an adequate case for drop-in coverage in that area, is what I understand we're going on here at the moment.
Okay.
But we do not have any type of ordinance that would prevent this from moving forward.
But we do have grounds based on what we found through the.
Correct.
Okay.
I feel like we
I'm
do.
good.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. We'll start with Mr. Burfine.
I vote to deny.
Vote to deny.
To deny.
Ms. Torres?
I do not vote to deny.
Okay.
So I vote to approve it.
All right.
Deny.
No.
I vote to deny.
Motion to deny passes 6-7.
May I ask a follow-up question? That does not come back for a second reading since it has been denied on first?
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, item number 10, conduct a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance granting a special use permit for a health studio on a portion of property addressed as 1417 Atkinson Drive. Bruce?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the applicant, April Wright, on behalf of the owner, Angela Renee Greer-Ivy, is requesting a special use permit for a health studio. You can see on the screen to your left the area that we're going to be discussing. The proposed health studio will be a leased area of approximately 1,760 square feet. The lease area is located within a retail strip center, which has 2 resale shops, a barber shop, and a paint store. The general character of the area is a mix of commercial and single-family residential. The lease area is on property zoned within a neighborhood retail zoning designation. The subject property is designated on the future land use map as neighborhood commercial. Properties to the west, east, and south are also considered neighborhood commercial. Staff finds the proposed special use permit consistent with the zoning and future land use as well as the existing uses within the area. Atkinson Drive is considered a major thoroughfare within the comprehensive plan. Staff finds the use of the portion of the existing retail strip for a health studio to have no adverse effects on the area. This request was unanimously approved by the P&Z Commission during its meeting on November 22nd. Staff recommends City Council conduct a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance granting special use permit for a health studio located on 1417 Atkinson Drive.
Thank you, Bruce. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, you may step forward at this time. There being none, we'll move to comments from the council.
Define health studio.
I actually know the young lady that's opening this. She does personal training, HIIT classes, yoga, just.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Item number 11, consider first reading of an ordinance in support of the application by the Chromium Corporation for a municipal setting designation through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Bruce?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Staff has received a request from BGE Environmental Services Group on behalf of the property owner for the City of Lufkin to adopt an ordinance in support of the municipal setting designation through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for the property located on 308 Ellen Trout Drive. This property is currently owned by Cyber Shield Incorporated, with the responsible party being the Chromium Corporation. Now, council is familiar with this. I think the last time we did it might have been 2014, and I think it involved Angelina Forest product. Angelina Hardwood, excuse me. So this is not unfamiliar, except it doesn't come along very often. Per the TCEQ, council may recall, an MSD is an official state designation given a property within a municipality or its territorial, or that is extraterritorial jurisdiction, that certifies that designated groundwater at the property is not used as potable water and is prohibited from future use as potable water because that groundwater is contaminated in excess of the applicable potable water protective concentration level. The prohibition must be in the form of a city ordinance or a restrictive covenant that's enforceable by the city and filed in the property records. One aside is that in order for a corporation, a business in this case, to have such a designation, they have to be served by city water for obvious reasons, because the water on their property will not be potable water if this goes forward. In other words, it can't be used for those purposes. The ordinance will document the City of Lufkin's support of the property owner in petitioning the TCEQ to certify the municipal setting designation. The application requires the property owner to document support from the municipality and the operator of the groundwater supply, which is why this matter is coming to council, simply to show its support for going forward with the MSD. Staff recommends council approve on first reading the ordinance in support of an application by the Chromium Corporation for a municipal setting designation through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality.
Thank you, Bruce. So we're not voting on that, I presume?
Yes, we will.
First reading. This is first reading.
First reading, yep.
Yep, they have to testify. Oh, I have a question. What's potable water?
Drinkable water. Usable water like we use our faucet water, drinkable water.
So my concern that I have, and I don't have any opposition because I don't really think I know enough to be opposed to it. The word chromium causes me some concern. It's seriously dangerous. And nothing that this company is proposing, they're going to have it studied to make sure that what they're getting ready to do is not doesn't filter down into the aquifer that is in that area.
Yes, that's all being conducted through TCEQ. And TCEQ will have to pass off on this themselves. They just can't go forward unless the municipality
tells them it's okay.
We provide the water, it's taken care of, and we support them going forward for the MSD.
Now, is this a part of that, would that area, that water in that area be part of the, I don't know if it's a yearly study we get in our mail at home that says we've tested the city water and it's good to drink?
Well, the city water is tested constantly all over the city, and so yes, it would be tested in that area as well.
Because I don't want Lufkin ended up like Michigan.
No, this would they still access and must be able to access Lufkin water.
Okay.
It's just that they will not be able to go out on their own property, dig a well, and use that water.
Oh, okay, good job.
That's what's being restricted. No use of water on that site.
Okay.
Potable water.
Okay.
We move to approve.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Item number 12, consider approval of the findings of facts regarding the City of Lufkin political boundaries following the publication of the 2020 census data and approval of an order for the criteria and redistricting of the City of Lufkin. Bruce?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is simply an order that acknowledges that we've received the information with respect to redistricting, and we understand and are going to proceed with redistricting. It sort of starts that ball rolling for that whole process. The order for redistricting political boundaries that's being proposed is based on the initial assessment that has been prepared by our consultant, Allison Bass and McGee. The entire assessment has been included in the council packet. It's rather lengthy, but you're able to see the basis upon which they've come to the conclusions they have. Council can see from this that the City of Lufkin is required by law to modify our existing political boundaries. The total maximum deviation for the City of Lufkin based on the 2020 census is 17.02%, and a percentage above 10% is presumptively unconstitutional. We've acknowledged we think that our census count was not a very good count, but that's irrelevant to what we have to do at this point. So it's being brought to the council simply to recognize this and get the ball rolling. This order acknowledges that the city will proceed with redistricting and the findings requiring it that I just summarized. Staff is waiting on the direction for the consultants regarding the availability to join us for a special called meeting where they'll be able to answer specific questions for you. We're also going to set up meetings where the public may comment. Council, who's been with us back 10 years ago, is familiar with that. At that time, we handled that process ourselves. We're just unable to do that this year. So that will be coming forward. At this time, though, staff recommends that City Council approve the findings of fact and order for the criteria and redistricting of the City of Lufkin political boundaries.
Didn't we already vote on the attorneys to do this?
Yes, and that's that's the consultant. That's the group.
No.
So this doesn't include, this is just them following through with what we've already approved.
And Bruce, who does the suggested new political boundary lines? Who comes up with those lines?
What will happen is that we do get input from various sources, but the bottom line, Councilman, is that they will come forward, our consultant themselves will come forward with several options for you to consider that will move the boundaries around, take in population from certain areas, that is other wards, and you all will ultimately decide, but they will come up with options.
All right, thank you.
And we'll notify you as soon as we can get a possible special call meeting where they will come down.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 13, consider resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an energy savings performance contract with Performance Services of Texas Incorporated. Bruce?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a follow-up to the presentation that PSI made a while back. We said that we would bring the hard data back with respect to the costs and the findings, and so this is a point at which we bring this back to council. I'll try to summarize it very quickly, and you can ask any questions that you have. We also have PSI here with us. If you have any questions, they will be glad to answer them. The staff has been working with this organization to develop an energy savings performance contract in accordance with Chapter 302 of the Texas Local Government Code. This concept of borrowing against future revenue was introduced to council at the previous meeting. Excuse me. Today, we're actually bringing the contract with the Performance Services of Texas Incorporated for consideration for council approval. Now, by way of reference, the whole project grew after our after-event evaluation of the winter storm, if you'll recall. We started looking at some of the ways that we could prevent or help that, keep that from happening. We looked into that. We met PSI and found out that there was a way that we could not only do that, but we could also handle our desire to increase the efficiency of our meters. So that's where it initially came from. PSI worked with staff to perform an investment grade audit. That's the IGA in the material that you looked at of all of our water metering. The objectives of the audit were to minimize the amount and percentage of lost water, to capture unrealized water revenues, to improve customer satisfaction, to improve water billing efficiency in a timeline, and to minimize future maintenance and operational costs. So they approached this audit with that in mind. Based on the analysis of metering efficiency and accuracy, there's additional revenue to be captured regarding by upgrading the city's meters. Now, council has known this, and I want to make it clear for the public at large. We have been trying to do this for some time. This is not new, and it would be coming in any event, except that we were doing it very slowly. By the time we're able to get this finished, we very likely are going to be necessary to start all over with new meters. What this allows us, this is a statutory basis that allows us to work with PSI and to provide that for that all at one time. So that's what's taking place if we do this instead of a little at a time. These funds can be used to improve, that is the additional revenue, can be used to improve our water system through an energy savings performance contract. That's what we are presenting today. PSI worked with the city staff to develop the project scope that includes the following requirements. Number one, installation of 15,428 solid-state ultrasonic meters. That's commercial and residential, with advanced metering infrastructure. Second, installation of a SCADA control system for all wastewater and water system components. This is how we review and keep up on what's happening remotely. The installation of 12 pressure plane valves with remote monitoring and control. What this does is it allows us to adjust those valves by region instead of having to shut all the water down at once, perhaps, if we have to deal with a problem in one area or one region. And then finally, installation of 10 large main valves with remote monitoring and control, which does the same. The City of Lufkin has a system input, and this is important data for council. You may have read it and perhaps haven't. We have a system input volume of 2.678 billion gallons, and we bill 2.213 billion gallons annually. So that leaves approximately 465 million gallons in recoverable and unrecoverable water losses. Now that's based on a 2018 to 2020 water audits. The city will benefit from the new solid-state water meters by increasing the billable gallons and decreasing recoverable water losses. So we have this 465 million gap that we're trying to, by improved meters, that we're trying to make up for. Now, based on the findings of this audit, the proposed improvements will result in a reduction of water loss and guarantee an increase in revenue of at least $1.648 or $1,648,691 per year. The proposed project cost is $18,696,214. Funding for this project is proposed through a tax-exempt lease purchase to be presented to the Finance Committee on January 18, 2022, and it would come back to you at that time. Now, further important information is that investment-grade audit showed that our average citywide meter efficiency runs about 90%. PSI will guarantee a year, after all of these meters are in, PSI will guarantee a year after these are all in, an increase to efficiency of 98.5%. Now, they've indicated that that's likely to be a bit higher, but this they're going to guarantee 98.5. So we could move.
Guarantee?
Pardon me?
A 1 year guarantee?
No, it's after 1 year we'll be hitting that. So it will increase the efficiency to 98.5. So it's this difference in efficiencies that result in the capture of water usage data that we're currently using, and with that greater efficiency comes the additional revenues to pay the cost of the project. Now, I will mention to you, although we won't go there because of time, but there is a chart that you've been able to look at in the audit itself. The chart is on page 27 of the audit. It does a very good job of outlining the cost savings and anticipated increased revenues covering the cost of the project over its life. Now, due to the existing inaccuracies of our meters, residential customers will, on average, see an increase of 9.2% on their water bill. This is water the customer receives that is not currently being billed. For commercial accounts, an average increase could be as high as 13%. Approximately 68% of increased revenues will come from commercial accounts because of the larger volume of usage for these accounts. Now, bear in mind, however, that some current customers will see no change in their water bill. Only those meters that are currently inaccurate and failing to capture all water usage will see a change. No City of Lufkin water customer will pay for more water than they are using. And the City of Lufkin is not raising water rates or any other established rate that can affect the cost of water consumption. So no raising of any rates, and no city citizen will pay for anything that they don't actually use. We just have done this on average, so we're looking at about 9.2%, but that's average. It depends on how inefficient the meters currently are and how much water loss is currently taking place. Now, with this in mind, we would bring back, if council passes this, we would bring back to the council on the 18th of January, we would bring back the actual funding package to be approved at that time. So staff recommends City Council approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an energy savings performance contract with Performance Services of Texas Incorporated.
I don't have a problem with what you're saying because we need it. But I do have a question that somewhere I'm remembering that many water meters were replaced not long ago. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
You are correct, but not many. That's with one.
Will they bring back to us like an area where that happened? Because if I'm being very personal, I think mine was replaced, but I'm gonna find out.
Here's what we did have happen, and I may need help from Kevin. May know this, but basically, it's my understanding that even the replacement of the meters that we were doing were sometimes partial. In other words, we were replacing parts. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking as a layman here, but what we're talking about is a change of the meters and upgrading of the meters. So we had begun making certain changes. They were not what we are
9% is a lot, though, for people on a fixed income. I mean, is there some way that, like we do, is there a way we could spread that total 9% out, or?
No, ma'am. What we would do is, and it would be maybe difficult for some, granted.
Yes.
One thing to keep in mind is that the residential portion is our smallest portion,
sure.
because the lines and the amount of water that's going through is less. And they will only be billed for the actual water that they use. So, but it will be just like any other bill. They won't be recapturing the past, so to speak. It'll just be month to month from this point forward. So, what we have been able to do in situations before is work with a bill in the past, perhaps, that had been excess water usage had occurred. This won't occur. It won't go back in the past. We'll start anew, and it will be whatever the usage that occurs on a monthly basis. And I don't know who that will be. I don't know whether it'll be those on fixed incomes or not, but could be fairly broad.
Bruce, my quick question, you have about 400 million gallons of lost water, right? It's not being billed. You're sending out water and you're getting billed back 400 million gallon difference. What percentage of that is water leaks?
I don't know if we have, do we have that data at all? Okay, we may be able to do that. Would you come forward?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So when we looked at the numbers that Mr. Green went through with the total loss, that works out to about 21%.
Sir, would you give us your name real quick?
Sorry, this
No
is
problem.
Ira Nicodemus of Performance Services.
Thank you.
So about 21% currently is the total loss. Now that's a combination of losses that happen before the meter, leaks. Some of that is just things that aren't billed for some reason, like maybe a hydrant's being flushed, and then there's the actual meter inaccuracy. So the only portion that we're really focusing on here is what's happening with the meter, because they're just not accurate, they're not
How
registering.
did you determine that the meters weren't accurate?
Yes, so what we
How do you
did,
know that we're not overbilling people?
yeah. So generally meters tend to, as they age, the mechanical meters, they run slower. So it's rare that you'll see that they do more. Now the way that we confirm that is we went through, we engaged a third-party testing company, and they tested a statistical sampling of the meter, so a couple hundred of them. So we went through different sizes, they were tested, and this is where the numbers of, when we say, currently they're 90% accurate, that's based on that sample set that was tested. Yes. So just to finish the question about what percent was from leaks. So currently, the total water loss is around 21%. This will be reduced down to, based on this recovery, about 15. So we're not saying we're completely eliminating it, because there will still be some things that aren't in the scope of this project, but we're just saying this is the portion that's attributed to the meter inaccuracy.
Thank you.
So the age of the meter would have an impact on the amount of water loss, what we're not counting. Am I correct?
Correct, and it's a matter of age, and then also how much water goes through that. So I think of it like a car. A car can be so many years old, but also has so many miles on it. To your question earlier, if I may, around the meters that were replaced recently. So we're replacing, as part of this project, about 15,400 some meters. The total in the city is a little over 18,000. So we have considered that. We're not changing the manufacturer that you currently use, and we're keeping those that are fairly new. So there was about 2,753 meters that are less than 9 years old. The plan is to keep those because they aren't really at that life. The ones that are older, we have. So we did consider that, and we're not going to do a full kind of rip and replace, so we can keep the cost down as much as possible with the ones that still have some good life left in them.
While I see the need for doing this, I have a concern for my segment. I'm always fussing about Ward 1, the older part of the city. It's not just Ward 1, but major parts are Ward 1, and the impact on the monthly payments of the residents of that area. We do have business, and I understand that, but I am deeply concerned about the cost to people from the older part of the community and what financial impact this could have on them, because we just raised water rates not too long ago, and it's not going to be good.
Yeah. I think the one piece I'll say with regard to that, because it's a valid concern. As we said, the meters are accurate, so they're going to use what's actually going through,
Sure.
but it still doesn't change the fact that it can be hard to do some. Currently, the city has a system called Aquahawk, which is a portal where you can see what your water use is. Now, for most folks, because of the availability of the data, that's only monthly, right? Part of the benefit of this is that the new the data is going to come in at a much more frequent level, so people will be able to look on their phone or their computer and see when they're using water. So, take for example someone that really is on a fixed income and needs to find a way to say, my bill went up 5-10% because it's more accurate. How can I reduce that? You're also giving them the tool to say, well, when am I using that water? So maybe if there's a leak, it'll actually send an alert. You can say, hey, I've got a leak somewhere. I can get that before it impacts the bill. Or you can see how much maybe your irrigation system uses if you have one. So what we like to think is that it is going to be on aggregate about this 9%. But if somebody really wants to, they have the tools now to go in and find some ways to conserve and can bring that back down.
You're thinking I have a millennial at my house that can read their computer.
I understand.
But I would hope that if people have concerns, Mr. City Manager, that there be some mechanism that we can teach them how to do what he just said to do. I wouldn't understand it. I'm past that age. But I am deeply concerned about the increase in the cost.
What we will do is if council passes this, we'll begin the process of education through our communications department. We're pretty good at getting that information out, and we will work on ways to make it clear and helpful to people if they happen to fall in that category.
Especially your seniors.
Sure, we'll do that.
I move approval.
Further questions?
Oh, I'm
Second.
sorry.
Thank you, sir. So, appreciate your time. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Do you want Bruce to talk about this a little bit more? maybe?
No.
I'll be glad to.
No, we're good. We're good. Rocky and I just had a moment. It's all
It
right.
looks like Ms. Thomasy chose the longest meeting of maybe my lifetime here on the council.
It's not over yet.
They don't, maybe we can go to 2 hours if we continue. So,
Well, you're
Okay.
about to get your paper out.
we have a motion and a second. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Item number 14. Consider approval of the purchase of communications equipment for the Lufkin Police Department through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and first reading of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the 2021-2022 operating budget, budget amendment number 7, appropriating the funding. Bruce?
Approve. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I would really like to talk about this one.
You know, and he's
I will.
highlighted parts of the description. I thought he was just going to read those highlighted parts, but I think he reads more than the description to that.
I go off
Continue.
off text.
I just need a vote.
Would you like to talk about it?
No,
You're good?
I can.
I mean, we're all aware of what's going on here, so,
Yeah, we good.
all right, we're good with it. So, who made a motion?
I did.
So we had a double motion, probably a triple motion over
Cedar
here.
made a motion, Bonner seconded.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we're going to enter an executive session, item number 15, but before we move to the executive session,
Can you give me another?
I want you to hear this. Mr. Suter has a birthday, had a birthday December the 1st. So, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Got gray hair.
Rocky.
Can I just get
You're not sitting down. So the time is, Gerald, would you tell Kara that we adjourned at 7:09? She's asked me for that. The time is 7:09, we're now adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Speak directly into the microphone.